Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Pop's Movie Dungeon. So I've been really excited about making this video. For the month of October, if you guys hadn't already seen before, I am doing something called 31 Screams, where I am watching a different Scream Factory release every single day for the month of October. And this is going to be my first review video. The way I'm doing it, because of my busy schedule, I'm only doing one update video a week on this. But basically, what I'm posting on Instagram and Letterboxd what I watch each day. And every weekend, on either Saturday or Sunday, I'm going to post a video of the movies that I watched for that particular week of the month of October. I've watched some great movies this week. Some movies I've never seen. Some movies I have not seen in years. And every single one of these are movies that I have not seen since I have bought them on Scream Factory. So I got to go through and enjoy the special features of some of the collector's editions. And this has just been a really fun week. And I'm really looking forward to week number 2. So as everybody knows, October 1st started on a Friday. So this first week's review has got a total of 9 videos. We got 2 extra movies in this first review. But without any further ado, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started here. The very first movie that I'm going to talk about is Stephen King's The Dead Zone. Now, this movie doesn't get talked about near as much as it should. Now, this is the first time that I have seen the Scream Factory release of this. The special features on this thing are well worth the price of this release. It had a good transfer. I mean, this is not really a movie that really benefits from an upgraded transfer. I mean, it's a very drab, dated movie. So basically, this is a 1983 movie that was directed by David Cronenberg, based on a book by Stephen King. It stars Christopher Walken, Brooke Adams, Tom Skerritt, Herbert Loom, and Martin Sheen. This is the story of Johnny Smith, played by Christopher Walken. He is a teacher in love with his co-worker Sarah, played by Brooke Adams. He gets into a terrible accident that puts him into a coma for 5 years. He wakes up to find out his girlfriend has been married and has a kid. He also has this amazing gift/curse of clairvoyance. He notices by grabbing the nurse's hand when he's waking up out of his coma, he's able to have a vision that saves her daughter's life from a house fire. This gets out to the press and he draws a lot of attention. Soon he is contacted by the local sheriff to help them by using his powers to help catch a serial killer. As time goes on, he moves on and tries to live a quiet life. But soon after, he gets hired by a very rich man to be a tutor for his son. And this allows him to meet a very powerful politician named Greg Stinson. Now, Greg Stinson is played by Martin Sheen, who does a great job of being the slimeball politician. Well, Greg Stinson is running for Senate, with hopes of one day being president. So one day after touching his hand, Johnny gets a vision of some terrible things he's going to do in the future. And so he decides to take matters into his own hands. And this movie here is very strong through the first 2 acts. It does kind of switch over a little bit in the 3rd act. And even though I do enjoy this movie, I believe the 3rd act is a little bit weaker. It kind of goes off of the politician a little too much. I kind of wish they kind of went a different angle with that. So guys, Christopher Walken does a great job in this role. Without him in the role, the scenes where he has his visions would have been cheesy and pretty silly. But with Walken and that intense stare he has, it comes across as powerful and very memorable scenes. This is the movie that introduced me to Christopher Walken, and I was an instant fan. I didn't watch The Deer Hunter until later on after seeing this for the first time. This was a great adaptation of Stephen King's book to film. This movie was well directed by Cronenberg, and all these years later still holds up. It is high on my list of movies based on Stephen King's books. I mean, hell, a Stephen King movie directed by David Cronenberg starring Christopher Walken, yes, sign me up. And also, the special features you get on this disc from Scream Factory are great, which is the case with most of their collector's editions. With this, you get a new 2021 4K scan of the original camera negative. You get something called Sarah's Story, a new interview with actress Brooke Adams. You get a new documentary called Cold Visions, Producing the Dead Zone, featuring interviews with production manager John M. Egret and associate producer Jeffrey Chernow. You get new commentaries from Mark Irvin, the director of photography, Michael Gingold, the film historian. New commentary with film historian Konstantin Nazar. New commentary with film music historian Daniel Schweiger with isolated score selections. You get something called Trailers from Hell of Mick Garris on the Dead Zone. Memories from the Dead Zone, The Look of the Dead Zone, Visions of the Dead Zone. I mean, guys, this thing is absolutely slam-packed with special features. So this movie is going to be a high recommend for me, and this was a great way to start off my 31 Screams of October. So guys, moving on to day number 2, I guess I was on a Stephen King trip here. My second movie I watched was Stephen King's Sleepwalkers. Now, if I had to rank Stephen King movies, where The Dead Zone will be closer to the top, this one here will probably be a little bit closer to the bottom. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean I don't enjoy this movie. There are things about this movie that I do enjoy, but it's definitely not one that I go back and revisit very often. But I had a good time with it. But this movie came out in 1992. It was directed by Mick Garris. And the interesting thing about this is Stephen King, this was actually based on an unpublished short story by Stephen King. And it was also a screenplay that he did. It doesn't really have any big stars in it, guys. It has Brian Krause, Alex Krieg, and I'm going to say this wrong, but Mädchen Amick. I think she plays the mom. And also has a very early appearance by Ron Perlman. He's not in it very much, but he has a cool scene where he gets his fingers bitten off, and it's kind of enjoyable. Something about Ron Perlman, he's just a funny looking guy to me. I enjoy seeing him on screen. It also has a great cameo by Mark Hamill in the very beginning, which I kind of enjoyed. Another great cameo in this is in most Stephen King movies, is Stephen King always has a little part in the movie. And in this movie here, Stephen King plays the gravedigger / caretaker or whatever you want to call it. And the great thing about this scene here, and I had to go back and look this up, whatever, because I didn't pick it up the first few times I've seen this movie actually, is Stephen King, the character he's playing is a caretaker, and he goes up trying to find the sheriff, and there's a group of deputies around. The first deputy he goes up to is the great director Tobe Hooper, obviously the director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He moves around a little bit trying to find the sheriff. He finds another deputy, and that deputy he talks to is the great director Clive Barker of Hellraiser. And so I thought that was kind of neat to have, those three greats in one scene together. You have, Stephen King, Tobe Hooper, and Clive Barker. That was just kind of a neat take. And it's something that I was like, when I seen Tobe Hooper, I'm like, I recognize this guy. And I had to look it up on IMDb, and when I seen that, I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I wanted to include that in my video. So the plot of this movie, I can pretty much sum up in one sentence. You have a mother and son. There's some type of supernatural creatures. They go to a small town looking for a virgin to feed on. That's the plot. So you're not going to get much out of this as far as story goes. You're pretty much going to be watching this movie for some of the special features. Some hold up, some don't. Most don't. You got some pretty good cameos in this movie. Some of the side characters you're going to recognize from other things. Just for example, the teacher, Mr. Fowler, was played by an actor named Glenn Shandix, which you probably recognize from Beetlejuice. As I mentioned before, you got Ron Perlman and Mark Hamill. And something else, it's got really good comic relief from an actor named Dan Martin, who plays the sheriff, or the sheriff deputy. And he has his sidekick, which is Clovis the Attack Cat. And, obviously sleepwalkers have a fear of cats. And cats can see them in their hidden form, and so cats always attack them. They always try to hide from cats. And so just the fact that you have this cop going around with a killer cat in the car with him, I thought was a little silly. But, for the plot of the movie, I guess it made sense. But, just my final thoughts, guys. If you're a Stephen King fan, if you've never seen this, definitely check it out. It's a fun watch. Don't go into it expecting much as far as story goes. Kind of turn your brain off, grab a couple drinks, sit down and watch the movie. You'll have a good time with it. But that's what I watched on day number 2, guys. That's Stephen King's Sleepwalkers. So moving on October 3rd, I watched a horror anthology movie called Nightmares. Now, I know there are a lot of people that are fans of this movie, just what I've read online. I hate to say this, but I'm really not a fan of this one. And I do love horror anthology movies, but this is definitely one of the weaker ones for me. This one here came out in 1983, and it was directed by Joseph Sargent. And this is an anthology of 4 horror tales with a supernatural twist based on urban legends. So this has a total of 4 chapters, and we'll just start off and go through each chapter really quick. The first chapter is called The Terror in Topanga, and I'm going to say this was probably the weakest thing I've ever seen on screen. So I'm going to give you the plot really quickly. You have a killer that's out killing people. A lady needs to buy cigarettes. She goes to the store to get cigarettes, runs into the killer gets killed, she comes back home, she quits smoking. That's it. I can't really go any deeper than that. There ain't much more to it. I can't really go any deeper than that. There's not really much more to it. Moving on to chapter 2, you have one called The Bishop of Battle. And this was a little more interesting because it starred a very young Emilio Estevez. And this is one of his earlier roles. This came out right after The Outsiders. And it came out 1 year before Repo Man and 2 years before The Breakfast Club. So this is right before Emilio Estevez had his heyday in the 80s. And it's always fun. I'm a big fan of Emilio Estevez, so I kind of enjoyed that. Emilio Estevez is addicted to this game called Bishop of Battle. And the plot of the story is he's basically trying to get to the secret level. He ends up getting sucked into the game, and that's pretty much it. But I can say one thing that I noticed about this one part is watching Emilio Estevez wearing a Walkman, walking into a mall video game room. It's about the 80s thing, the most 80s thing I've ever seen on screen. Moving on to chapter 3, and this has one of my favorite actors in it. Lance Henriksen was in this part, and it's called The Benediction. Basically, Lance Henriksen plays a preacher that lost his faith. He's leaving this church that's located somewhere in the desert, it looks like maybe in Mexico, and he's driving across the desert, and there's this black truck that's chasing him that's obviously supposed to represent the demon or the devil that he's running from. And the premise of the plot basically is that. I mean, it's somewhat enjoyable, not much to it, but it was okay. It was definitely, so far, it was the best of the 3 I've seen to this point. Favorite of the 4-part anthology was definitely the last one. It was called Night of the Rat. And this one was definitely much better. It starred a guy named Richard Mazur. I'll put his picture up here. He played the dad in License to Drive. He also played in The Thing. And I've seen him in a bunch of other movies. There was a movie that I really liked with Tom Berenger and Kirstie Alley back in the day called Shoot to Kill. He played a small part in that. But he's always a good character actor. And it was kind of nice seeing him play this part. And he kind of is the character that when he kind of freaks out a little bit, he's kind of enjoyable to watch. And so I can see why they cast him in this. So the basic plot is you have a father, mother, and daughter living in this house, and they have a rat problem. Well, coming to find out, there's a killer rat in the house. I mean, and the special effects on that rat is something else. If you don't watch it for anything else, just the special effects they use on the rat is so laughable. It's almost worth watching it just to see the special effects. It's pretty comical, but that story was enjoyable. Watching Richard Masur, his little freak out over the rat when he's chasing the rat down, that was fun. But other than that, guys, I can't say much more about this release. And one last thing to note about this is if you guys collect the MVD rewinds, there is a release they have called Savannah Smiles, and this is a movie that I have seen many times growing up. But it stars an actress named Bridget Anderson. Well, she stars in this movie. Well, she was the one that plays Savannah in Savannah Smiles. And I'd never seen her in anything else. So it was a nice surprise. I knew I recognized her. I had to look her up to see what I knew her from. But she was in Savannah Smiles. Now, it was kind of sad. She died really young from a drug overdose. She died at 21. So that was very sad. But I really can't recommend this, guys. There was a few things about it that I enjoyed. But overall, as far as the horror anthology goes, this is going to be the bottom of the stack for me. Go out and watch Creepshow or Body Bags, John Carpenter's Body Bags. You'll have a much better time. So next up on day 4, I watched another Scream Factory Collector's Edition. Now this one is one that I know has a pretty big following, and that is called The Craft. Love that artwork. So this is the first time watch for me. I had seen bits and pieces over the years, but I never sat down and watched this entire movie. This is a 1996 movie directed by Andrew Fleming. It stars Robin Tunney, Fairuza Balk, if I'm saying that right, Neve Campbell, Rachel True, and Skeet Ulrich. Now, in case you didn't pick up on that, I said Neve Campbell and Skeet Ulrich. I didn't realize that those two who starred in Scream also starred in this movie in the same year. So the basic premise of the movie is a newcomer comes to a Catholic prep school, and she falls in with a trio of girls who all turn out to be witches. Well, she's also a witch, and when the four of them get together, they become very powerful, and they are able to conjure up spells that they cast against people that anger them. And that's the general premise of the movie. Now, one thing I found interesting is the director really wanted to get a PG-13 rating for this movie, just kind of for the demographic. They were forced to get an R rating because of it had teenagers and witchcraft in it. Not because of the nudity or profanity. It got an R rating because of the witchcraft and there was teenagers. So I thought that kind of sucks. And I understand for this demographic, a PG-13 would have probably been more profitable for them, so I can understand that. So, but anyway, this movie did end up getting an R rating. Now, a couple things about the movie I found interesting when I was doing a little research on it is all the girls that starred in the movie were all 20 or above, and they were all playing high school girls. Thought that was interesting. And Robin Tunney, who played the main star, she had recently been in a movie called Empire Records where she had to shave her head. So this movie was done shortly thereafter, so she had to wear a wig the entire movie. So if you ever watch the movie, there's a couple scenes, especially the scene of her on the beach, you can really tell she's wearing a wig. You know, basically the special features on this are pretty good. You get 4 new items. You get Directing the Craft, an interview with co-writer and director Andrew Fleming. You get an interview with Douglas Wick. You get an interview with co-writer Peter Fillotti, an interview with makeup effects supervisor Tony Gardner. And there's also some older features on here. You get some audio commentaries with Andrew Fleming, a featurette called Conjuring the Craft, the making of the craft, some deleted scenes and theatrical trailer. So once again, Scream Factory did a great job with their collector's edition. People that are big fans of this movie, I feel like they'll be very pleased with this release. So yeah, that's what I watched on day 4, guys. That was The Craft. It was pretty good. Again, not one I think I'll go back to very often. So on day 5, I watched another Scream Factory collector's edition, and that is Alone in the Dark. Now this is one of their more recent releases, and this movie has got a fantastic cast. It stars Jack Palance, Donald Pleasance, Martin Landau, and Erland von Lith. Now, if you're not familiar with that name, if you guys have ever seen Running Man, this is the guy that played Dynamo from that movie. I'll put an image right up here just in case you've never seen it. Now, this guy passed away really early. He passed away shortly after Running Man in 1987, but he plays one of the escaped mental patients in this movie, and he does a fantastic job. He's really creepy, and he plays a really slow, kind of a dumb guy. And according to the director in the special features, this guy is a genius. He's an opera singer. He was the amateur wrestler. He had all kind of degrees, and it was really hard for him to play this slow character. And so the director said it was something he had to really train him in, as far as how to kind of not be so intelligent on screen, which I thought was kind of funny. And a couple other things about this I wanted to mention is there was somebody at the beginning of this movie that I seen, and I thought that I recognized her, so I had to look it up. Lynn Shay is in this movie, a very young Lynn Shay. So if you watch the movie, pay attention to the receptionist at the institution. That's a young Lynn Shay. I thought that was always kind of neat. That's one reason. That's another reason why I like going back and watching these old movies. It's always neat to see these big actors now, or bigger actors now, when they got started. And also, this film was one of the first horror films to be made with Dolby stereo sound. The advanced sound level would often blow out the speaker systems in some of these older dingy theaters that would show movies like this back in the early 80s. So I thought that was kind of funny. So yeah, so a lot of these little, grindhouse type theaters that would show this type of movie back in 82, they were having problems with their speakers getting blown out because they're using this new technology called Dolby Stereo. So the basic plot of the movie is there was a blackout and 4 mental patients escaped from a local institution. Now, a new doctor had recently come to the institution, and they were convinced that this new doctor had killed their old doctor. So whenever there was the blackout and they escaped from the institution, they worked their way back to this new doctor's house in order to basically kill him and his family. So that's the basic premise of the movie. Now, one thing I can say about this movie that really surprised me, and I guess really I probably shouldn't have, knowing the cast that was in this movie, is this movie came out in 1982. And during that time, this was the heyday of the slasher films. You had your Halloweens, you had your Don't Go in the Woods Alone, your Friday the 13th. You name it, there was a slew of slasher films during this time. And most of these slasher films were just cookie cutter stuff. I mean, you go and you got the same. You got a killer, you got teenagers, you got sex, drugs, etc. This movie here was different. During that time, this movie actually had a plot. And this movie, you actually cared about the characters. One thing I was noticing through watching this movie was how well this movie was acted, and it was well directed. I was really blown away that I had never seen this before, but I really enjoyed this one just because it was generally a good movie. So yeah, this is going to be a high recommend for me, guys. If you guys have seen it, let me know down below what you thought of this movie. This is one of my biggest surprises of this week for sure. So on day 6, I watched Scream Factory's release of Body Parts. Now guys, if you had not seen this movie before, this is a high recommend for me. I really enjoyed this movie. This movie came out in 1991, and it was directed by a guy named Eric Red. Now, even though Eric Red does not have a lot of other directing credits to his name, he has written a few movies that I really enjoyed and didn't know that he was the writer of. One would be The Hitcher with Rutger Hauer and C. Thomas Howell, and the other would be Near Dark with Bill Paxton and Lance Henriksen. So I thought that was kind of neat. Those are 2 movies I really enjoy. But this movie stars Jeff Fahey, Lindsay Duncan, Kim Delaney, and the voice of Chucky himself, Brad Dourif. The first thing I noticed when revisiting this movie is how much I really like Jeff Fahey. He's a very underused actor. I feel like his career should have been bigger than it was. He has a really great screen presence, and he really shows it in this movie. He does a fantastic job. So basically, Jeff Fahey plays a guy named Bill Cruikshank, a criminal psychologist that loses his arm in a terrible car crash and gets a new arm transplanted. What he finds out later is that his transplanted arm came from a recently executed serial killer who has killed over 20 people. The arm's working great, even better than his old arm, but eventually he starts having really bad, vivid dreams and starts losing control of the arm. Basically, he starts doing some research about the arm and the guy that it came from, And he finds out during his research that there was 2 other recipients of various body parts from this guy. Brad Dourif received the other arm, and there's a guy that received a pair of his legs. And so he seeks these guys out, and just a lot of craziness ensues. Now, the plot of this movie is a little out there, but it is done and it is directed very well, and Jeff Fahey plays a fantastic part in this. Going from the normal sane guy to the edge of insanity character he becomes. He's a really underrated actor, guys. So I'd like to see him do more. I don't know what all he has coming up, and I'm sure he's been in some stuff I hadn't seen. I mainly remember him from Lost, from Psycho 3, and of course this movie here. And there was something else. Oh, he was more recently, he was in the Grindhouse movies, the Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. And I'm sure he's done some other stuff that I've seen that I'm drawing a blank right now. So again, guys, this movie really holds up. It's a really solid thriller. It's got a pretty cool story. Yeah, this one here was a fun watch, guys. This is one of my favorites of the week. So on day 7, I watched another collector's edition from Scream Factory, and this one is Silent Hill. Now, I love the artwork on this, guys. Really good looking release. Now, I'd never seen this movie before, at least not in its entirety. And I know my youngest son had recently watched this a few months back, and he was a fan of it. But I'm going to let you know right now, guys, this movie didn't really do it for me. Now, I'm going to go over my review and kind of explain why, but I was really bored through this entire movie. I mean, I know there's probably some fans out there that's going to disagree with me, but that's just my opinion. But we'll get into it, guys. This movie came out in 2006. It was directed by Christoph Gans, and it stars Radha Mitchell, Sean Bean, and Laurie Holden. So this movie was based on the 1999 video game. And maybe if I'd have played the game, I'd have been a little more invested into the story. I mean, it does have some nice visuals, some very solid effects, some cool-looking creatures. The problem was I really didn't care much for the story. It was watchable, but not one I see myself coming back to very often. The basic plot is a little girl sleepwalks, and frequently she mentions the place called Silent Hill. Her mother decides to take her there against her father's wishes. When they arrive, the girl goes missing in the town. The rest of the movie is the mother trying to find her daughter, and the father trying to find both of them. Now, along the way to Silent Hill, she gets pulled over by a police officer, and she ends up running away from the police officer. I mean, it never really explains why. If it did, I missed it. Well, the father is also he has his own side story where he's trying to find the town. He's trying to find information about what happened to his wife and daughter. And so you have that side story. I mean, Sean Bean was good in this. I mean, there was nothing wrong with the acting. The acting was fine. It's just the story was just really thin. And, I mean, that's just my opinion. I don't mean to offend anybody that's big fans of this movie. I know this video game was pretty popular back in the day. And I know there are a lot of fans of this movie. And I really went into this movie thinking that I was really going to enjoy it. And when it was over with, it was just like, you know, I'm enjoying the special effects, but I just really I didn't care anything about the story or the characters. Maybe I'm not alone with that, guys. Let me know down below what you think about that. And I'm sure my youngest son's going to give me hell about that because I know he enjoyed this one and the next movie. But, yeah, but that's my opinion of Silent Hill, guys. You know, nice packaging. To be honest with you, I didn't even go over the special features on this one. When it was over with, I was done. But, yeah, I was kind of surprised. I thought this was going to be one that I was going to enjoy, but not a fan. So next up on day 8, I watched the recent Scream Factory release, The Vigil. This was a movie I knew absolutely nothing about. Before Scream Factory said they were going to release this movie, I'd never heard of it before. And I'm going to go ahead and say right now that by far this was the biggest surprise of the week. And only because I love Dead Zone so much, I'm going to say this is probably the one I enjoyed the most this week. By far, this was the biggest surprise. I'm going to go ahead and say right now, guys, this movie is pretty damn creepy. I watch most of these horror movies by myself. My wife is not a big horror fan. And so a lot of these movies I'll watch later at night by myself. And I've watched a lot of horror movies. And there's a certain few that kind of every once in a while just kind of get me. You know what I mean? And this was one of those movies. There was a couple scenes in this movie where, yeah, it kind of got me a little bit. I'm not going to lie. But this movie was directed by Keith Thomas. Now, he's a first-time director. And let me just say, I'm going to keep my eyes on this guy because this movie was done extremely well. It stars really a no-name cast. It has Dave Davis, Manesh Lustig, and Malky Goldman. The basic plot is this. A man with financial problems that has recently walked away from his religion is offered money to be a shomer. Now, I had to look up what a shomer was. And it's basically a Jewish practice of watching over the recently deceased to say prayers to comfort the soul and ward off evil spirits. So you have a guy here who had a tragedy. who kind of lost faith in his religion. He was having some financial problems. He's also having some type of mental problems, which they don't really explain throughout the movie for the most part, so it kind of keeps you on edge whether or not he's really seeing these things or if he's kind of having episodes again. So that was a nice little twist. But as he's at this house watching this body, whatever, some strange things starts happening. There's an evil spirit that's basically attached itself to this house. And the story goes a little deeper than that. You guys can just watch it, and I don't want to spoil anything. But let's just put it this way, guys. If you put Ed and Lorraine Loring in this movie, you have a really solid Conjuring sequel. I'm just going to say that. And I'm a big fan of The Conjuring, at least the first two. But, I mean, basically, you put Ed and Lorraine Loring in this movie here, and automatically you have a better sequel than Part 3 for sure. So, I mean, this guy here, Dave Davis, that plays the main character here, I don't know if you can see him on the back there. I'll pop his picture up top here. He deserves a little recognition. He does a great job in this movie. Now, it's always nice. I mean, that's one thing I love about collecting these boutique titles. It's always nice to watch some of these movies and come across one that just becomes one of your favorites. And I can definitely say this is one that I'll go back to, and I'm going to highly recommend this movie. If you guys don't watch anything else out of this stack here, or anything else I watched this month, watch The Vigil, guys. I feel like you guys will really enjoy this movie. The only negative, and I want to be careful because I don't want to spoil anything. The only negative that I have about this is really it kind of dies off a little bit at the end. The ending could have been a little bit stronger, but other than that, I have no complaints. I mean, I think overall this movie is pretty solid. I don't have nothing but good things to say about it. So guys, check this movie out. It was definitely one of my best surprises of this week. Alright, so the last movie on this list I watched on October the 9th, and this is another collector's edition. This is Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell. I love that cover art. This is a 2009 movie directed by the great Sam Raimi, and I'm a huge Sam Raimi fan. It stars Christina Brown, Justin Long, and Lorna Raver. Basically, a loan officer who evicts an old woman from her home finds herself the recipient of a supernatural gypsy curse. So I'm a big Sam Raimi fan, as I said before. The Evil Dead movies are some of my favorite horror movies of all times. This movie has Raimi's signature all over it. From the slightly tilted camera shots to the way the possessed guy during the goat scene floats in the air. I've seen a lot of what I love in the Evil Dead movies in this. This is my first time revisiting this movie since I got the Scream Factory release, and I can say it looks great. Really enjoyed this movie, and I am glad I added it to my watch list this October. So as far as the special features on this, you get an HD master of the unrated cut from the 2K Digital Intermediate, an interview with actress Alison Lemon, an interview with actress Lorna Raver, an interview with composer Christopher Young, and these are all new features to this disc. And you also get some of the vintage stuff as well, some still galleries, TV spots, theatrical trailer. You get vintage interviews with director Sam Raimi and actress Alison Lemon and Justin Long. That's some of the older stuff that's on here. So once again, the collector's edition of this movie, I mean, it doesn't disappoint. This is another recommend for me, guys. So some of the cool things that I read about when I was reading about this movie, the yellow Delta 88 in the movie is the same car used in the Evil Dead films. So Sam Raimi's friend Bruce Campbell was asked to be in this movie. As you know, Bruce Campbell stars in most of Sam Raimi's movies. And he would have played the bank manager if he would have got the part. But he was busy filming his show Burn Notice at the time and had to turn him down. That kind of sucks. It would have been fun to see Bruce Campbell in this. But yeah, guys, definitely recommend. If you haven't seen it, by all means, please check this one out. If you're a fan of the Evil Dead movies and haven't seen this, there's a lot of aspects of this you're going to recognize from the Evil Dead. I think some of the demon sounds even sounds the same as what you see in the Evil Dead. So guys, that's going to end my first week. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm looking forward to another week watching some great movies. And I will be back with you guys. I'm going to be back with some other videos this week, but I'll be back with more of these movies next weekend. I'm going to film my update, my week 2 update of October next Saturday or Sunday, just like this week. But like I said, I got some more great movies in mind. I'll be posting what I'm watching on Instagram and Letterboxd. So guys, please follow me on both of those platforms, and please follow me here. If you're first time here, please subscribe to this video. If you like this content, I got a lot more like this coming out, guys. Please, hit that like button. Leave your comments down below what you're watching this October. I'd love to get new ideas and some stuff to watch. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but I've kind of stuck myself to the Scream Factory logo for this Halloween. There are some other Halloween movies that I would like to watch. I'm going to try to fit in there on the side. But for the purpose of this, I'm just sticking to Scream Factory. And the main reason of that is that's the biggest company I collect for right now. I have so many Scream Factory titles I've yet to watch. And this seemed like a good excuse to kind of knock some of those out. But guys, I'll be back here real soon with another video. You guys have a great weekend. Have a great week. And I'll be back real soon. Everybody be safe.